Good morning, audience. My name is Shreya Mangar, and today I will be presenting my research paper on the topic Cerebellum Coordination Test. So, in this presentation, I will be explaining about the functions of the cerebellum and the importance of coordination testing and how these tests help in accessing motor control and balance in patients with the neurological conditions. I'll also highlight some key points from my research paper that shows how cerebellar tests are essential in physiotherapy and rehabilitation. From my research paper, I would like to share you guys one important point. So, here is my research paper. So, as you all can read here, that testing for cerebellar signs is only possible when the motor power is preserved because the function of the cerebellum is to administer movement. So, this statement means that cerebellar tests which check coordination can only be performed if the person's muscles are strong enough to move normally. This is because the cerebellum, a part of the brain located at the back of the skull, does not create movement but rather controls and coordinates it, and it ensures that movements are smooth, accurate, and well timed. So, if a person has a muscle weakness, for example, due to nerve injury or paralysis, then their movement will already be abnormal and it becomes impossible to know whether the problem is due to muscle weakness or cerebellar dysfunction. So, to know more deeply about the cerebellum, I would like to share you guys a short video where you will totally understand about the cerebellum. So here is the video. Let's start.
Welcome to 2 Minute Neuroscience, where I simplistically explain neuroscience topics in 2 minutes or less. In this installment, I will discuss the cerebellum. Cerebellum is Latin for little brain, and the cerebellum does look like a miniature version of the brain as it protrudes from under the posterior and inferior region of the cerebral cortex. Although the cerebellum has many functions, it is primarily associated with movement. Specifically, it seems to be involved with facilitating movement by detecting errors that occur in the course of a movement and correcting them, so the movement appears fluid and achieves its intended goal. The cerebellum is also involved with motor learning to reduce the likelihood errors in movement will occur again in the future. The cerebellum consists of two cerebellar hemispheres and
From the start, you all have already understood that cerebellum does look like a miniature version of the brain as it protrudes from the under the posterior and inferior region of the cerebellar cortex. And cerebellum is also known as the little bone, although the cerebellum has many functions, but it is primarily associated with the movements. Visually, it seems to be involved with facilitating movement by detecting errors that occurs in course of movement and correcting them. So the movement appears fluid and achieve its intended goals. So let's continue the video.
can be divided into three parts. The cerebrocerebellum receives input from the
I would like to say one point that to understand the cerebellar more easily, it is divided into two cerebellar hemisphere and that can be divided into three parts. So let's see about it more clearly.
cerebral cortex and is involved with planning and initiating movements. The spinocerebellum receives information about limb position and touch and pressure sensations from the spinal cord. The spinocerebellum uses this information, for example, to compare where a limb is in space with where it should be if the movement were going as planned. If there is a discrepancy, the spinocerebellum can modify motor signals to correct any errors in the movement. The vermis is the area of the spinocerebellum that runs along the midline of the cerebellum. It is involved with posture, limb movement, and eye movements. The vestibulocerebellum, also called the flocculonodular lobe, is important to maintaining equilibrium, balance, and posture. The cerebellum communicates with the rest of the nervous system through three large pathways called the cerebellar peduncles, which include the superior, middle, and inferior cerebellar peduncles. When information is sent to the cerebellum, it takes an indirect path to reach extensively branched cells called Purkinje cells. These cells then project to a group of nuclei in the center of the cerebellum called the deep cerebellar nuclei. The deep cerebellar nuclei send the information to various areas in the brainstem and thalamus that then can influence motor areas of the cortex or descending motor tracts to modify movements.
So it was the video about the cerebellum. So as I have said that the cerebellum consists of the two cerebellar hemisphere and can be divided into three parts. The cerebellum receives the input from the cerebellar cortex, and then it is involved with the planning and initiating movements. And the another one, a spinocerebellum, receives the information about limb position and touch and pressure the sensation from the spinal cord. And the third one is the spinocerebellum, which uses this information, for example, to compare where a limb is in space with where it should be if the movement were going as planned. So this was all about the cerebellum. So to know more about the cerebellar coordination test, I would like to share you one lab video where you will be knowing about how a physiotherapist uses this coordination test in patient in primary or secondary. So it is a lab video that I have taken.
Hey everyone, so today I will be explaining about the cerebellar coordination test. So there are various types of the cerebellar coordination test which is responsible for the movement, balance and the fine motor control. So first let's know about it more clearly. What is cerebellar coordination test? Cerebellar coordination test is a test used to assess the function of the cerebellum, and as I have said already, there are various types of the cerebellar coordination test. The first one is the finger to nose test. In this test, the procedure is that the patient alternatively try to touch their own nose.
So to understand firstly about the cerebellar coordination test, so first let's know about it clearly. So cerebellar coordination tests are used to assess the function of the cerebellum and which is responsible for the balance, coordination, and fine motor control.
And then the examiner's finger. So to understand it more practically, I would like to have my patient touches their own nose. Firstly try to touches my finger and then to our nose. Again repeat the same. So what we have to observe here is we have to observe for the tremor, inaccuracy and any difficulties in reaching the target. If the touch is normal and there is a smooth movement, then it is normal. But if there is difficulty in reaching the target, then it is abnormal and it can lead to cerebellar disorders. The second test is finger to finger test. So for this test, I'll have my patient to reach out her hand to the side of the body and try to touch the finger.
So the first test was the finger to nose test. As you have seen that the procedure for is that the patient alternatively try to touch their nose and then the examiner's finger. So what we have to observe here is we have to observe for the accuracy and smoothness. If the patient is able to reach the targeted area, then it is normal. But if the patient is unable to reach the targeted area, then it can be abnormal and can lead to cerebellar disorder. And the second test here we are performing is the finger to finger test.
And then repeat the same. So same thing, what we have to observe here is that we have to look for the accuracy and inaccuracy. If there is the smoothness in touching the target, then it is normal. But if there is not smoothness in touching the target, then it is abnormal. The third test is the
So the second test is the nose finger to finger test. Sorry, finger to finger test. So here The procedure is the patient alternatively try to touch their index finger together in front of their torso. And the same thing we have to observe here is look for the accuracy and smoothness.
Rapid alternative movement. So for this, I'll have my patient to place your hand like this on your thigh and then pronate it, and then alternatively try to do it more quickly for about 10 minutes, and that's RAM, which is the rapid alternative movement. So what we have to look here is we have to look for the smoothness and irregular rhythm. So the fourth test is known.
So the third test is known as the RAM, which is a rapid alternative movement. So the procedure for this is that the patient have to her uh, place her palm over her thigh and rapidly rapidly do the supine and the supination and the pronation of the palm quickly for about 10 minutes. And what we have to observe here is we have to look for the slowness and irregular rhythm. If there is difficulty in doing the supination and pronation, then it can be the loss of the motor sense and lead to cerebellar disorder.
As the heel to shin dish. So what we have to do here is I have my patient to place your heel of right foot over the shin bone and then slowly drag your heel of the foot downward and repeat the same. So here what we have to observe here is we have to look for the smoothness and straightness of the accuracy. If it is accurate in the targeted direction, then it is normal, and if it is not, then it is abnormal. So the fifth one is the gait test.
So the fourth one was the heel to shin test. So what we have to do here is, as you have seen in the video, that the patient runs the heel of one foot down to the shin of the opposite leg. So shin of the tibia bone, not the fibula bone. So what we have to observe here is we have to observe for the smoothness and the straightness. And the last one is the gait, which is also known as the walking test. So here we go.
And it is also known as the walking test. So in this test we have to check the balance of the patient and the stability. So for the gait analysis, I'll let my patient walk here normally and follow my instruction, then turn around and try to walk with your tippy toes, and then again turn around and try to walk with your heel. So what we have to observe here is if the patient is unable to move and there is instability, then the patient can lose the motor sense, and if the patient is able to walk properly and is steady, then it is normal. So that was all about the cerebellar coordination test. Thank you.
So as you have seen in the video that about the gait or the walking test, we let the patient walk over 6 feet or walk over a figure of eight direction and check for the balance stability. If the patient is having difficulty in walking or there is the injury in the plantar fraction, then it can lead to the a loss of the motor sense and can lead to the cerebellar disorder. So it was the lab video. I hope this made you understand more easily and made your doubts clear. And lastly, I would like to highlight one thing from my book chapter. The book I have the book I have chosen is this book. Let me just open it once. The uh, the book name is Therapeutic Exercise, and the author of this book is Caroline Kirshner, John Bostadt, and Lynn Allen Colby. So it is of the 8th edition, and the key point I have highlighted is this one. As you all can see here, what I have highlighted is that physical therapists commonly evaluate balance and use balance training or exercise as either primary or secondary intervention for patients undergoing many types of rehabilitation program. So lastly, what I want to say is that physical therapists commonly evaluate balance and use balance training for the exercises as either primary or secondary intervention of the patients undergoing many types of rehabilitation programs. And it reflects a core principle in the physiotherapy practice because balance is a fundamental component of almost all human movement, whether it's involving standing, walking, reaching, or performing daily activities. So, physical therapists are trained to assess a patient's balance using various standardized tests, like I have said that Romberg test, FAM test, and eye to nose test. So, this assessment, therapists can identify underlying problem in posture control and coordination or stability. And balance exercises can serve as primary intervention, meaning they are the main focus of the therapy, especially in conditions like cerebellar ataxia, which is the lack of the coordination, vestibular dysfunction, post-stroke rehabilitation. Therefore, balance assessment and training are vital component of the rehabilitation, uh, not only for restoring movement but also for preventing injuries, improving stability. So I would like to end my presentation here and thank you everyone for listening to my research paper and thank you for your precious time. So that's all I wanted to convey. Thank you.